I now call on Branko Penic to more fully introduce our guest speaker of the day. Thank you, Branko.
It's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today, Walter Lee. Walter is the Chief Strategy Officer of the AFL, and he's been a key member of the AFL's executive team since 2017, and he's been at the AFL much longer than that as well. Walter's responsible for shaping the long-term strategy of the game and how the competition grows and how it's funded, how it's broadcast, and also how it's experienced by us, the fans. Walter joined the AFL almost 2 decades ago after working as a strategy consultant with Booz Allen Hamilton. We actually worked together back in those days. So I've known Walter for quite a long time. His role at the AFL has spanned everything from negotiating record TV rights to writing the blueprint for the AFLW women's competition, to building new stadiums, such as the one in Adelaide, across the country. So he's been involved in all the key strategic initiatives and things that are really changing and evolving the game. Most recently, Walter spent some time in India looking at how the AFL could become a global game. And obviously, India is a massive market, as we know, from cricket and other sports. Walter also has a keen interest in data and AI, given technology backgrounds and so forth, and currently serves on the boards of several sports tech companies, including Champion Data and Play HQ. Today's topic that Walter will talk to us about is playing the long game. So the AFL takes a very long perspective in terms of how the game evolves, how it involves the men's league, the women's league, community leagues, and so forth. So please welcome Walter, and we look forward to hearing a bit more about his work at the AFL. Thank you.
Thank you, Branko. And I already was interrogated by the two Phillips on my table about the AFL. And so I think this is going to be a lively Q&A kind of speech as well. So one question I get asked a lot in my role at the AFL is, how's it different from business? And I usually give two answers. The first answer is, like the two Phillips, everyone has a suggestion on how the game could be run better. I only have to be waiting for a coffee at my local cafe, and before my takeaway is ready, Julian, the barista, has solved national expansion, the roof in Tasmania, the fixture, the rules, and of course, the umpiring. In most industries, that level of unsolicited strategic advice would be unusual. In football, it's sort of expected. My second answer is this. In most industries, if your product hasn't changed in over 100 years, you're probably in trouble as a business. In football, if you change it too much, you're also probably in a lot of trouble. And that brings me to what I want to talk about today, which is playing the long game. So how do we make sure a 165-year-old institution like the AFL continues to succeed for the next 10, 20, 50 years? Where do you start? Interestingly, one of the best ways to think about the future is to look into the past. A retired board member once told me that before you renovate and modernize a house, you have to study the original blueprints really closely. You need to know what's a load-bearing wall and what's just a window frame, because if you knock down the wrong one, the roof falls on your head. And that lesson equally applies well to institutions like the AFL, because the AFL wasn't the billion-dollar commercial enterprise that it is today. In the 1980s, the game in Victoria was in real trouble. Crowds were declining, the competition had become uneven, one-sided, and predictable. And half the clubs, and there might be some accountants in the room here, or former accountants, they were technically insolvent by today's ASIC standards. Things were so serious that clubs faced a very stark decision: either relocate to another part of the country or disappear from history completely. The CEO of the time, the AFL CEO or VFL CEO at the time, Jack Hamilton, commissioned a major study and review into the competition. And the study identified three major issues. The first one, governance. They found that having 12 AFL club presidents acting as a board of the league was an unworkable model. Nothing important could be agreed because every decision was filtered through the self-interest of the individual clubs. And the conclusion was this, that the game needed an independent commission, leaders who would make decisions in the interests of the game, not just their own club. Second, it was a review into the structure of the competition. The game needed to evolve from being just a Victorian league into a national competition. And that meant adding clubs from outside Victoria. It also meant embracing television, playing games on Sundays, playing games at night, and matches in the best stadiums, rather than spreading them across 10 aging suburban venues. The third insight, and this is my favorite, came from something new at the time, market research into fans. And the research found something quite interesting, that the decline in crowds, the decline in attendances in the game wasn't because of the quality of football, which was the thinking at that time. And in fact, they said it was too much handball, and that was why they didn't like the game at the moment. The real reason was, the real cause was social change. Because in 1987, for those that remember, a new law was introduced in Victoria to allow shops and retail stores to open on Saturday afternoon. And suddenly football had competition for people's time. For the marketers in the room, the research also identified two distinct groups of fans. The first were what we call the tribals. And they were the passionate members. They were the ones who attended every week. The second were the theatre goers. The theatre goers, a much larger group who attended only a few games each season, but they made up the bulk of attendances. And unsurprisingly, what they found in this research was that the two groups didn't always want the same things. The tribals, they didn't want a national competition. They didn't want more teams in the competition. They didn't like night football. They didn't like Sunday games. And they certainly didn't want to move from their old grandstands, even if their seat was falling apart on them. The Independent Commission went on to implement many of these reforms in the 80s. And these new teams that were established in Adelaide, in Perth, Sydney, and Brisbane, games started being played at night, first occasionally, then regularly on Saturday nights, and then eventually Friday nights as well. And where the games were played changed as well. So fans got to enjoy the comfort of the MCG and Waverley Park. And if those remember, Waverley Park eventually got sold and built into a modern AFL venue in Docklands today in Marvel Stadium. These decisions unlocked unprecedented growth for the game. The broadcast and commercial deals grew into billion-dollar agreements that we know about today. And that growth has allowed the AFL to invest in areas that simply were not possible decades ago. Today, we have a professional women's competition in AFLW, inspiring more than 140,000 women and girls to play the game every weekend. And the AFL reinvests 10 cents of every dollar it earns straight back into the community, into community football, supporting more than the 625,000 participants nationally and the millions of volunteers in the canteens who keep their local clubs running every week. The AFL works with local councils as well to build more ovals and change rooms in communities. And with the explosion in participation of Australian rules football, we now need 2 ovals a week, every week, for the next 4 years, just to meet the demand for the game. Those decisions, they set up the modern AFL. Of course, looking back today, most people agree they were the right decisions. But at the time, they were deeply controversial. They challenged tradition. They disrupted long-standing structures. and they asked our fans to think beyond the interests of their own club. And that highlights an important leadership truth. The decisions that secure the future of an institution are rarely the ones that win the most applause in the moment. Sometimes the decisions that are best for the long-term health of an organization are the least popular in the short term. And so the long game never stops and the work is never finished. Today, the game faces a new set of challenges. First, demographic change. I see a couple of heads nodding here. Australia is becoming more diverse. Nearly half of Australians today were either born overseas or have a parent that was. The next generation of AFL fans and players will have to look very different from the last. Because we know if kids stop playing sport at 10, they rarely show up again when they're 30. But how do you fall in love with a game that you didn't grow up with? How do you fall in love with a game if you can't see yourself in it? Two AFL player names that don't get mentioned often. Jaden Nguyen, with Vietnamese heritage, who played his first game at Essendon last season. Jai Saxena, a player of Indian heritage, just recently drafted to Collingwood. These trailblazers will have an extraordinary impact on the communities they represent. They help young people see that the game can belong to them too, which means the AFL has a responsibility. It needs to keep expanding pathways and opportunities for the next generation and for everyone. The second big challenge for the AFL is the competition for attention. When the VFL began in 1897, sport didn't really compete with very much. In the 1980s, as we learnt, it competed with shops and retail stores opening on a Saturday afternoon. But today we compete with Netflix, with social media, and funnily enough, shopping again. Only now it's on Amazon Prime. We are no longer just competing with other sports. We are competing with the entire entertainment industry, which forces us to think differently about how the game is presented. The foundation is still great football, close games, high skill, exciting contests, but we also need to create moments that capture attention and create belonging. That's why the AFL has invested in building major events across the season. I think just on this table, we were talking about opening round, which was just last weekend, to gather round in Adelaide, where all 18 clubs play in one city. And the Anzac Day tradition, as we know, Collingwood and Essendon, to the final series and the grand final in the iconic MCG. And now, earlier this year, we returned with the State of Origin, a concept that we hope to keep alive, and a wildcard round, adding extra drama and hope for fans to the start of the finals. These are not just events, they are more moments for fans to connect with the game, more opportunities to feel like you belong, and more chances to stay relevant in a very crowded entertainment landscape. The third frontier for the game, you're probably going to think I'm mad bring this up, but let's go. Third frontier is the place Australian football might have in the world. So just stay with me here. For most of its history, football was a Victorian game. Over the past 40 years, it has managed to find its way to become a national game. The next chapter may be introducing the sport to new audiences globally. And interestingly, this process has already begun. This might be a fact that not many people in the room know, but Australian football is in fact now played in more than 55 countries around the world. As Branko mentioned, I just got back from India. And over in India, there are actually 10,000 young players competing in 67 leagues in 13 of the 28 states in India. 10,000. Small in, I would say, Indian terms, but in Australian terms, that's not a number you can ignore. And they play for teams like the Jharkhand Crows and the Bihar Bulldogs. Now, we're clearly still a long way from Marcus Bontempelli and Nick Dacos lining up in an Indian Premier League for Australian football. but it does highlight something important because there's something special about Australian football, I think, which is once people experience the game, once they hold a football in their hands, it has an uncanny ability to capture their imagination. And it's a beautiful thing to see halfway across the world. So with events like the 2032 Brisbane Olympics coming up, this could provide that unique opportunity, that once in a generation opportunity to showcase Australian football to a global audience. And we look forward to that. I guess all this to just bring us back to the idea of the long game. When you look back at the history of the AFL, one thing becomes abundantly clear. Every generation inherits the game, then faces its own version of what's the next long game. The leaders of the 1980s, they made the difficult decisions that shaped the next 50 years, and I get to enjoy part of that now working at the AFL. But our responsibility is the same, to leave the game in a better shape than when you had found it. And if we get the long game right, the AFL will still be thriving in another 50 years, and that's my hope. And that maybe my son and Julian, if you remember Julian the barista, his son, they'll be still sitting in the cafe, passionately debating the same things we do today. The fixture, the rules, and of course, the umpiring. Some things should never change. Thank you.
Thanks, Walter. Now, Walter's very kindly agreed to take some questions from the floor. So Phil's got the mic. He'll come over. Just put your hand up and...
Who wants to start the ball rolling? Bounce. I will start, Walter. I must admit, I did ask Walter a couple of questions when we were sitting at the table, but I've got 5 grandchildren. There we go. And they're all under 10. And one of the things that we discussed just the other day was they barrack for Hawthorn, and they look at their timetable going forward, and the idea of going to a Thursday night game at the MCG and fronting up to primary school the next day is just not on. So, I mean, the discussion I had was that I think it's the media that's probably driving the entertainment, and there may be a slight consequence for grandchildren. Am I correct?
Walter.
No, thank you. And it's actually one of the most common things that we get feedback on, which is the fixture and specifically the scheduling of game times. And you're 100% right. They are driven a lot by the TV and the broadcast around that. But what we try to make sure is that every club, and Hawthorn being an excellent example here, get a good combination of home and away games that get spread off across Saturday afternoons and Sunday afternoons around the traditional time slots. But like I maybe mentioned before, the broadcast deal is an incredible funder of the game. And to get that balance right, there's a commercial reality around what we try to do there. And a lot of fans do get to enjoy a Thursday night game on TV. I certainly like watching it on Thursday night. But that enables us to do the investments that we talked about, I think, earlier as well. So, but getting that balance right is absolutely key. Yeah.
Walter, my son and grandson went to a game in Shanghai a couple of years ago. What are we doing up there?
Yeah, so we played 3 games, I think, 3 seasons where Port Adelaide played various clubs like St Kilda in Shanghai. There was an initiative that was largely driven by the Australian government, actually, to try to promote better relations with China at the time. Because I don't know if you remember at that time, actually a lot of Australian politicians couldn't travel to China. But the one time that the Chinese government allowed an Australian politician to travel was for this particular game. And so it did assist in our sort of relations around that. Unfortunately, during COVID, that initiative was shut down. And with the borders being locked down for 2 or 3 years, I think the appetite disappeared off the back of that. And so we still have teams playing in China. We have a big expat community that support the game in China. It's something we're looking to, but it's, again, probably a very long-term kind of venture. I don't think we'll be back there playing again. It's it's an incredible exercise trying to play the game in a place like Shanghai. It's not a natural environment for football.
Thanks, Walter. You mentioned the AFL generates most of its revenue through media. The media landscape's constantly changing, and I guess with the introduction of a lot of pay providers, makes it less democratic for such a democratic sport for people to be able to watch for free.
Yeah.
Where do you envisage the media landscape to be in 10 years, and how will we watch football in 10 years' time?
Yeah. That's a great question. And Adrian, it's all I think about every night and every day around this. It's very difficult to predict where the media landscape is going. For us, it is about trying to make sure that we get that nice balance right between money to fund the game, but getting reach and exposure for the game as well. And so in the latest TV deal that we did, we made sure that we didn't go backwards in terms of the coverage that you get on free TV. But there is also an interesting reality around this. More and more new homes are being built, and less people have a antenna in their home to receive free TV. And so we still want to make it free, and it's important that the game can be accessed to its widest audience around that. And I anticipate we'll always have games free and available, albeit it might be through a streaming platform or through your TV kind of apps, because I think that's where the world's going with TV.
Well done, Walter. In view of your international ambitions, which I'm sure will be successful, I'm just wondering who your international partners are, because in Rotary, we have declining membership while you have rising attendance. But we are very strong in a lot of the world. We're in over 200 countries. And I'm just wondering whether a partnership with Rotary could be beneficial to us both.
Yeah. Peter, thank you. I mean, absolutely. I've just got told a little bit about Rotary's global reach around, and I know there are a few people who've travelled from overseas as well here as well. I think there's probably something quite positive in that, because at its heart, when we're trying to grow the game overseas, it's going to be looking less like bringing a game overseas, like bringing an AFL club. It's going to be more around trying to grow the grassroots competition in there. And I know Rotary's incredibly strong in the community level. And so if there's a way that we can work together in different territories, I definitely welcome that conversation. Thank you.
Walter, to your left, Bernie McIntosh. Thank you for your presentation. At the 23-minute mark of the last quarter on... No.
You got me there.
In terms of the women's game and their rapid take up of which is fantastic. I've had a couple of girls play it myself. But the propensity for different injuries and knee injuries and the like, has there been any thought about changing the rules somewhat to accommodate the differences in the game?
Yeah. Yes, there has. And we do a lot of study into the biomechanics of female bodies versus male bodies, and different sort of rhythms and cycles that we sort of study quite deeply, and their propensity to cause injury, I think, at the high performance kind of level. But that is research that then gets brought down to the community level around this as well. And so we're definitely seeing more knee injuries, a higher propensity to concussion as well, I think, around this. And so for us, it's less about modifying the rules, but putting better training and better strengthening kind of mechanisms into there as well. And so a big push that we're trying to do at the moment is to upskill a lot of the coaches in community football clubs to teach them around different training, to the different physiologies that they have to work with at the community level. And so we try to help with a lot of resources around that. Our challenge is every time we try to just shift the rules a little bit for the women's game, we get a lot of pushback, I would say, around, no, we want to play exactly the game that the boys play, with the minimal kind of amount of adjustments. But let's see, over the next few years, I think we might start to see some shifts around that.
Thank you. Walter, to your left, Bernie McIntosh. Thank you for your presentation. At the 23-minute mark of the last quarter on... No.
Thank you.
Walter,
Walter, Paul Rayner, guest of Phil. I enjoyed your presentation. Look, you talked about, when you go to bed at night, you worry about what's going to happen with, communication of the game. But what is the thing that worries you the most? I mean, you're in charge of long-term strategy, the future of the game. I love the game. Everyone loves the game, but things don't stay the same forever. So what's the thing you worry the most about to actually ensure the longevity of the game of AFL? Because you've got a lot of competition out there, huge amount of competition.
Yeah. It's a great question. It's a very broad question as well. I'd say the one word that always sticks to my head is just relevance. The game's got to stay relevant to its younger audiences, to its diverse audiences, but to never lose its traditions and lose its heart, I think. And balancing that tension is a very emotive conversation, I think, that happens within our game. And we just got to make sure that I think the best analogy I've got given is it's a little bit like surfing, and I don't really know how to surf, but I sort of understand the concept here, which is you never want to be behind the surf because you're washed out in the back, but you don't want to be too far in front as well. You want to be just a little bit ahead of it. And if you can just sort of picture that in terms of what we do with the game, with the rules, with the umpiring, with how it's presented, to cultural relevance with TikTok superstars, these are the things that we want to make sure we're just a little bit ahead of the game. You definitely won't want to be behind it with something like that.
Any more questions? Yes, just down the bar, Hawthorn supporter. Wait there, come on, gee.
Thanks for the presentation, Walter. I guess my question sort of relates to the AFL's ability to take a stand on social issues, so racism, sexism, drugs in sport. Where does that come from? Do you do market research on that? Is it led by the Commission or your executive team, or is it a bottom-up sort of approach to those really important issues that play out in the public?
Yeah, it's a constant discussion that we have around that, around the Commission table, and I'd say the two places that it gets primarily led out of are usually the players. I think we first stepped into the social issues arena when Nicky Widmar took his stand in Victoria Park and lifted his jersey up in response to racist remarks that he had on the field. And ever since then, we found that's actually the most powerful avenue for us, because driven by the players, we do have to make sure it's an environment that they want to work in. It is a job for them at the end of the day. And so it's incredibly important that it's treated like a proper workplace, I think, around that. And so issues like racism, issues like sexism, which might be experienced by an AFLW player, for example, these are some of the things we take quite seriously, I think, in the game. And the second avenue is obviously our people as well, and our the staff that work in our industry, and that is everything from coaches to community club volunteers to the umpires, I would say, as well, like all the people who work within the game as well. I think we want to make sure that it's a game that they want to work, it's a workplace that they want to work with as well. And so, yeah, I would say that's probably where it's driven out of, around that. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Thank you.
All done?
All done. Thank you.
Okay.
So I've got a quick one. The game is expanded nationally and so forth. What do you think will happen with locations where it doesn't get played at the moment? We have a couple of games here in Canberra, things like that. So the territories, there's obviously good followership, particularly up in Darwin as well. Do you see the game expanding, or a one-off special occasionally in other remoter locations?
Great question. Now that Tasmania has sort of carved the way for being a very small state, I'm not trying to offend any Tasmanians here, but now that we're starting a team in there, I think every sort of 300 to 400,000 population kind of area has applied for an AFL license as well, now that they think that's possible. Look, Northern Territory is a really special part for the game. So we play a dream time game in Alice Springs. We play several games a year. I think Melbourne go up there for the Darwin games, and so do Gold Coast as well. So we try to have a presence there. It is something that we are contemplating around, actually, is that, which is we've got 19 teams coming with Tasmania. Where would a logical 20th team go to? And I think we're lucky in that we have so many options, I think, around that. And that's something to contemplate into the future.
Thanks. Thanks, Walter. Please join me in thanking Walter for his excellent presentation and taking all the questions. And I'd like to present you with a small gift. It's a pair of Rotary socks, as well as a pair of business socks from Wilderness Wear. And Phil tells me, it's Phil's company, and Phil tells me there's also a pair of very warm winter socks for those cold winter games. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us, Walter. Just one other quick update for everyone here. Given we're on a footy theme, I thought I'd give a quick update about the Go Pies coterie, which I'm sure everyone's interested in, especially given our wonderful start to the season. So I couldn't miss the opportunity, could I? It may not be there down the track, but the Go Pies team within our club has kicked the year off already. We had a meeting this morning. We had a conference call originally a couple of weeks ago, but we had our first meeting of the year this morning. Planning is well underway for a couple of different activities. One of the traditional activities we've done each year is take a group of people from a disadvantaged background to a game. Historically, we've worked with the Collingwood Footy Club for that to get tickets, and then we work with an organisation to bring people to the game and their carers or helpers to that. This year, we've reached out to the Les Twentyman Foundation, who helps a lot of disadvantaged youth and youth with problems and so forth. Spoke to them. They're keen to participate in the program with us. And I've reached out to the Collingwood Footy Club looking for some tickets to a game where we could take, say, 10 kids along, 5 or 6 carers from the foundation, as well as 4 or 5 of the Go Pies supporters. So that's one of our initiatives we're planning for the year. The other initiative that we're looking at doing, which more people can get involved in if they'd like to, is a volunteering opportunity. Collingwood Foundation supports an organisation or a cafe just down here in Bourke Street called Magpie Nest, which is run by the Salvos. President Phillip and I met with the head of the Salvos locally, Brendan Nottle, a few weeks back, and I've spoken to him since about an opportunity to do some volunteering at the Magpie Nest, where they feed breakfast, lunch and dinner, basically, homeless people in the city area and so forth. Our communications have said there's probably a good opportunity in late April for us to take a small team of people down there and help out serving food, preparing food, doing things in a voluntary capacity. So that one I'll put a bit more information out about. It doesn't need to be just Go Pies people. It's just a good volunteering opportunity. Obviously the Go Pies will be there, but we welcome all the other teams that are not quite as organised as we are.